Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this webinar. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest for this webinar, Trent Cotton, who's the Vice President of Talent and Culture at HatchWorks, excuse me, with a career dedicated to optimizing HR and enhancing organizational performance. Trent is a really true leader in this field, and I'm super excited to see his knowledge and dive in deep on the topic of LinkedIn and other avenues to go. Trent excels in crafting innovative HR strategies that boost engagement, attract top talent, and bolster retention. And his expertise spans into high performance recruiting. And that's why you guys are all here. So without further ado, I want to introduce you, Trent Cotton, to the webinar and give you a little background on him.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. So just real quick, 20 years in HR. Did I major in HR? Absolutely not. I actually got my degree in business marketing and a minor in statistics and finance. I was a banker. I thought that's what I was going to do. And decided to make a career pivot. And I was trying to figure out, okay, what are two areas that I think need to be changed the most? And it was between accounting and HR. I had already spent a stint in accounting as an auditor and got kicked out because apparently they don't like practical jokes in those departments. So I was like, I'll give HR a try. And so I came into recruiting hoping that I was going to change it. And it's been 20 years and I still haven't. So still trying.
Where do you see the biggest hurdles in the field of recruiting currently right now?
The market. You know, prior to pandemic, you could kind of look and, recruiting was very cyclical. You can kind of go, I've seen this before. I've got a baseline. This is what I do. The pandemic came and I think just sucker punched all of us. And it's been one sucker punch after another in recruiting. So we went from pandemic to the great resignation to the great rehiring, where I think it was late 2021, according to LinkedIn, for every one recruiter who had recruiter in their title in the US, there were 13 open positions. Now I think there is one open recruiter position and there are 43 recruiters applying for it. So it's very debilitating. So those of us that are still left employed are usually working with half the staff, half the team, half the resources because our budgets have been cut. But the expectations are higher because there are more candidates in the market, which means that, if we do our job right, we're going to have to dig in more and it takes time. Got managers, just barreling down our backs about time to fill and getting this done and getting this done. So it's not a fun time to be in recruiting. In fact, I was speaking to a college group of people. I don't know why they asked me to come speak, but it was for HR. And, I talked a little bit about all the different aspects of HR that I've worked in. And one of them asked, what advice would you have for someone who wants to get in recruiting? I said, don't. There's too many of us out there now, not enough jobs. Find something else, get into it a little bit later whenever the market picks up.
Awesome. You talk a lot about high performance recruiting, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
we're all here to tap your brain on what that looks like. How do you define high performance recruiting and walk us through your approach in developing that with your organizations that you've worked with?
Yeah, so I just wrote a book on the topic, released it, I think it was in January. And for me, it just kind of started out as I write for a hobby. If someone buys it and reads it and finds some value in it, fantastic. It's more of it's cathartic for me. It helps me kind of get all this stuff out of my head. And so whenever I was researching and talking to some of my favorite peeps in the industry who are actual influencers, not the ones that the big blue says are influencers, I find that there was very common traits. So I started with 10 and then kind of narrowed it down to, I call it the seven deadlies. So intellectual curiosity, they have grit, they're highly adaptable, they're okay with respectful conflict, they do bursty communications, they're very goal oriented, and they want everyone to be accountable, and that includes their client. So whether you're a search agency working with the client or your internal recruiting and your client is the hiring manager, they want that mutual accountability. And I found that whenever I look back over my career of the teams that I worked on that I knew were different, all of us have worked on those teams. You go, this team's just different. We gel, we think alike. not groupthink, but we approach problem solving the same way. Um, Daniel has a strength here, which is one of my weaknesses, but one of my strengths is one of his weaknesses. You put us together, we'll conquer the world. Those are the kinds of teams that I wanted to really kind of tap into. And so whenever I looked at consistent themes and then I ran this by some of my favorite recruiting leaders, all of us were kind of like, yeah, this just about sums it up. Now, hiring a recruiter with all seven is highly unlikely. If you do find them, jump on it. But there are a couple of qualities that if you say my entire team needs to exhibit these seven traits, and you start finding where am I weak? Maybe I need someone that's got a lot of grit. So the next hire I make, that's going to be the competency that I'm evaluating the strongest.
And when you're developing your teams, are these conversations being had in performance reviews or one-on-ones
Mhm.
of identifying strengths and weaknesses per the specific individual and the overall team?
Definitely, definitely. So, and I am going to pause because I don't really talk about people's weaknesses, and I know that sounds very touchy-feely, new agey, but there's a reason. All right. If you came to me and said, Trent, I need you to be more detail oriented, I'd say good luck. It's just not the way my brain works. I can be, but I have to turn off the other side of my brain whenever I'm looking at contracts and things like that because I really have to concentrate. Being highly adaptable, embracing change, burst of communication, all those things just come natural to me. So I like to find on my team who has what strengths, and I put them in a position that they can use that strength and they can excel because the whole organization is going to benefit. And more importantly, that person's going to be engaged because they're playing to their prime. You put me in an audit position, can I do it? Absolutely. Would I have fun doing it? Absolutely not. That's not something I'd hit the floor in the morning going, yay, I get to go tell people what they did wrong. That's just not how I'm wired.
For sure. You said that the recruiting industry is taking a turn from the worst right now. And
Yeah.
what are some of the common challenges recruiting leaders face from a process standpoint? And when you're talking to those leaders, is there a
Mhm.
common theme you find when consulting other TA leaders within the space?
Yeah, I do some pro bono and I do some other coaching. And in sprint recruiting, which is my other book, whenever I first started this journey of trying to figure out how can we fix the recruiting process? How can we optimize it? I found that there were four very common dysfunctions, and everything else is just a parlay or a deviation from one of those core four. The first one is everything's a priority, which means nothing is a priority. That's the Chicken Little effect. You got the hiring manager. Oh my God, we got to get this filled. We got to get this filled. You get them five candidates, and then they ghost you. Right? It's the bane of my existence. The second one is that as recruiters, we move so fast and we're so incredibly focused on moving things across the line that we never stop and go, what happened with this play? Why did we miss the ball here? There's no looking and saying what worked so we can scale it and what didn't so we can tackle it and not repeat that same mistake. And then the last is that we've got so many candidates in progress. Whenever I was working on that particular part of Sprint, I noticed that several of the recruiters, they would send 30 or 40 candidates and the manager wouldn't respond and they go and send 30 or 40 more. And I'm like, that's a complete waste of time. So putting some limits on the number of candidates in process increases candidate engagement and the candidate experience. It also gives the recruiter an opportunity to focus more on quality. And then, of course, the last one is feedback. I already hinted to it twice. We have a 48-hour rule in sprint recruiting. I send you a candidate, 48 hours. If you start showing that you're taking longer than 48 hours, guess what? You go to the bottom of the list. I'm going to work with the managers that the organization has said this is a priority role, and the manager who has that priority role is acting like it's a priority because that's where you have that hiring partnership and that's where things really win. So whenever I'm talking to leaders, they always go, I've read your book, but I've got a different problem. And then when we truly dissect it, it goes into one of those four.
Is there more so out of those four? Is there more than the other? Like, what's the number one theme, would you say?
The biggest thing is trying to be everything for everyone. It never works. You got to focus on the one thing. And recruiters, especially, because most of us are overachievers, right? We want to say that we moved all this done and we did all this throughout the end of the week, but at the end of the week, we have nothing to show for it. So shifting that mindset of going, look, out of these 400 roles the organization has, the organization said that for the next 2 weeks, these 20 are the most important. They've ranked them by assigning a point value, and you have one of them that's the top, number of points that's assigned. You don't work on anything else until you hit 5 candidates and either submitted or hiring manager interview. I don't care if you have 600. That one is your main priority. And my job as your leader is to blow any obstacle and provide you any support that you need to move that one down the field. And once you move that down the field, then we move to the next one. So it creates this drumbeat, and it is a huge mindset shift for recruiters. I think that's whenever we implement it, and I'm working with leaders, um, and sitting in on their one-on-ones with them, or even whenever I'm leading the change in an organization. Well, let me tell you about this one over here. I don't care about that one over there. I care about these five that the organization has said is more important, and it's a
And what
mindset shift for them.
And once you switch that, you want to give the resources to your teams to be successful,
Absolutely.
to actually deliver. I know you have some
Hmm.
thoughts on Big Blue. What are those challenges you have faced or your team has faced utilizing it? And
Hmm.
what resources and tools have you equipped your team to be successful, to deliver to your organization?
I am whenever I look at a tool, and I use this a lot, this analogy a lot whenever I'm talking about AI and recruiting, because there's this two different camps. Everyone, one camp's all in on AI. Let's just do everything. It's not going to replace recruiting. The other one is, these are the terminators. You just don't know you're inviting them into the organization. I fall right down the middle. I look at my team members as being Tony Stark on the Avengers. They're great. They're fantastic. They have a great personality. People love them. They're funny. They're just a good, awesome, awesome individual. Borderline badass. Whenever they put on that AI suit, they become Iron Man, and Iron Man is a superhero. So every tool that I look at is this going to enable my team member to be a superhero or no? If the answer is no, not interested. If the answer is yes, I go all in. So looking at Big Blue, as we will call them. And I got to be careful because I think they've shadow banned me because my views and everything have gone down because I've been very, very, very outspoken about the lack of innovation that I've seen in the recruiting product. Whenever I look at a company that is owned by one of the largest companies, who is also one of the largest stockholders and investors in OpenAI, and I see that they're just now putting in some things that should have been done probably a year ago. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you add to it this constant increase of 8 to 20% year over year, but I'm not seeing an 8 to 20% increase in my candidate engagement, nor do I have the analytics that I need to be able to determine, is this tool worth it or not? For us, we're a small firm, money counts. The amount of money that we were spending for the value, I determined, you know what, this just doesn't make sense. So we started testing. We already had Hire Easy because, as you know, everywhere I go, I drag you along with me, and have since 2018. We started doing some testing and saying, okay, in most recruiters' minds, it's we got to have LinkedIn Recruiter. Everyone only answers LinkedIn. We started running some A/B tests and said, could we find higher quality candidates? For us, a huge benefit being in tech is that we can go and say, just find people who have GitHub. That's huge because there's two stones that or two birds that I'm killing with one stone. The first one is that I have access to their GitHub, so I can submit that, whenever I'm presenting them to a client, and increase the opportunity of the client going, hey, yeah, this is really somebody good. The other is that if they have a GitHub, we have access to their information, so I've got a direct email into them. And so we started to see that the number of candidates we were able to source was higher, the contact information that we had was higher. And then we started seeing that the reply rate with the sequence emails and all of these others, but I had an analytics board that told me the information that I needed that my gut was already telling me, but I love, me, I love data. Having the data to be able to look down and I shared something on my YouTube channel, I think it was last week or this week. I love the new project report because I can look and see how many people moved from contacted or good fit to contacted to reply to recruiter screening. And if I see that number spike, then I know in my brain next week I should see a higher number of technical interviews or hiring manager interviews or candidates being presented. And if I don't, as a data person, I'm going to zero right in and say, what happened here? Do we not have enough technical interviewers? Were the candidates, was it a holiday? Did we lose candidates? If we did, why? I don't have that with a lot of the other tools.
You talked about leading with data, and the first thing that you do is understanding the talent mapping and the market,
Mm-hmm.
going into those conversations with the hiring managers and equipping your recruiters with the ammo to
Mm-hmm.
make movement and influence that hiring decision. Is other tools out there not giving you the capabilities in order to have stakeholders buy in to the data that you're delivering? Walk us through kind of that approach and
Yeah.
how your team is utilizing the easy insights.
So, case in point was working on a proposal, and they were like, we need someone that has got 8 years in AI. Okay, what kind of AI? Gen AI. Okay. Don't know if you've been around, but Gen AI has only been around for X number of years and it's not eight. But and sometimes I come off as a smart ass, so I have to be very careful about how I approach things, and that's why Hire Easy gives me just a great little tool that I can kind of go, let's just build the search and let the data tell us, the story. So as I'm building that search, and I'm sharing my screen with them, and I go through and I source with them and say, okay, is this nice to have? Is this a mandatory? Where do you want this person? Down to GitHub, down to industry. I'm able to go and show them in real time. Okay, we had 22,000. Now we're at 2,200. And you added 16 years of React. Now we're down to two. Okay, is that 16 years? Can we dial that back? Okay, look at there. We're up to 1,100. And then all I do is I go and I click, and especially if it's in the US, I love this. I click on analytics and I show them, here's the titles. So you're looking for, Rust developer. We're not going to find a Rust developer. Most people are software engineer and they got Rust here. I can look at in the market and that subset, what's that bell curve look like in number of years of experience plus number of years in their current role. And why is that important? You have managers that go, this person's moved every 2 years. Yes, they have. And if you look at the pool, that's the top of the bell curve. Most of them stay at 2 years and then they go and they start the cycle over again. So again, you have the data. And then you get down to the pricing aspect of it, and you've got that bell curve. So let's say the bell sits in the middle at 130 to 150, and what they want is 95,000. Okay. Well, just understand you have shrunk my pool by X amount. Seeing that visually helps the leader kind of start making some compromises on the search. But more importantly, it positions you as being the talent consultant. You're not just taking an order now. You're walking them through here is realistically what's going on in the environment, in the industry. Here's the data. And I mean, most of the time, whenever I sit down with the client for the first time and go through this, they're mind blown. Like, wow, okay, cool. And you can even do it by location. So, we're all throughout Latin America. We don't want to hire in Brazil. Okay, well, you just cut my pool in half. You know what? Brazil's not that bad. That's what I thought. Let's add them back in there. So it enables a conversation rather than recruiters reading the job description or getting the job description in their gut going, this is never going to work. Now we have the data to do it. I'm a little passionate about that if you couldn't tell.
You mentioned a little bit about everybody says you have to have a LinkedIn just to be in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
How has that quote or mantra within the recruiting industry, how do you overcome that, selling that to your team, to your leadership of saying, no, we don't need LinkedIn Recruiter, and talk a little more about kind of international recruiting on how culture is different at one country versus another
Yeah.
and different ways to approach. They're not all on LinkedIn. You have to find other avenues to get in contact with individuals.
Yeah, so we'll kind of talk about implementing change first. And I'm going to say
Sure.
it really depends on your team. There are some teams that I've worked with that I said, "Hey, this is what I think we should do." And they were like, "Okay, cool." They didn't really care. They trusted me. Others was trust but verify. So we had to run some A/B tests. Um, you really need to kind of understand what your team needs and how they are embracing change before you develop a plan. For me, I always like to test. I fall in love quickly, both personally and professionally. So sometimes I find a tool, I think it's nice and sexy, but I've got others on my team that look at things completely different than I do. So having that team buy-in where we're all testing it and going, okay, Trent loves this, but I think it's kind of clunky here, or it gives me some risk concerns here, and we talk about it and then we make a decision as a group. So that's kind of the approach. And I think culturally is the same thing. How you do things in the US can be a lot more direct than in maybe other cultures where that's seen as being very dictatorial. And you cut people out of being excited about the change that you're trying to implement. So it really is a very tactical, almost surgical approach that you have to take whenever you're um, shifting tools, shifting directions. And for me, I was thinking about my first answer is how do I sell the fact that I want to do something outside of what everybody else is doing? I've always been the queer kid, so I've always stood out. I never wanted to be normal. I never wanted to go with the crowd. I always wanted to do my own thing. So if 98% of the recruiters are on LinkedIn, fantastic, because now I've got 98% of the market. I can get to them through their email and not be ignored. That's just how I see things. It's just it's maybe weird. It should be weird. It's outside of the norm. But if I'm doing what no one else is doing, my chances for engaging that top talent is going to increase significantly.
Do you think that in this market right now, we utilize LinkedIn Recruiter as kind of like a crutch of, hey, I'm on a hard to fill role. I sent out 20 messages, 100 messages on LinkedIn Recruiter. I haven't had a response back, and I don't have the details, even if they have looked at my message. Have they responded? The only way I know is if they respond to me. Um, and that approach of saying, hey, hands off, I've done my job and sent out messages. But in other platforms, there's analytics, whether it's email, whether it's open rate, click through rate, all the other analytics that this
Mm-hmm.
recruiting industry is changing towards. Do you think people utilize LinkedIn because then it's kind of an out to take ownership of, yes, I'm going to fill this role? What's your thoughts on that?
Brutal. So not too long ago, LinkedIn had an outage and people lost their minds. Like I thought maybe I'd finally been shadow banned because I actually posted something about LinkedIn that day. I was like, all right, I did it. And so I was texting other people going, is your LinkedIn down or is it just me? But I was laughing at the number of recruiters that said how much productivity they lost because of the hour and a half that LinkedIn was down or however long it was. And I kind of laughed to myself because I'm looking at your desk and I'm flashing back to 2004 whenever I sat in a cube. If you were to walk in my cube, you would have seen stacks of telephone books, Chamber of Commerce, that was my Google. I had them organized by state, by city. I was never afraid to pick up the phone and call someone and go, hey, may not be a good time now, but I just want to learn about you. 20 minutes, that's all I'm asking for. That's all I needed. And then I got in and I did my little sale where I would kind of crack that door open and find out more about them. I do agree that since LinkedIn Recruiter has become the norm, it has become a crutch. There is nothing that infuriates me more whenever I go to a recruiter and they go, well, I've sent out 500 messages. Okay, that tells me two things. One, you didn't take the time to really sit down and figure out what's the right candidate. Because whenever I go after people, I go after like 20, 25, because I want to test and make sure is my message landing? Am I hitting the right people? And if I talk to three or four of them and they're not meeting the mark of my job description, I don't have another 450 emails that I have to go back and go, hey, sorry, I jacked that search up. I'm refining my search, so that's one thing. It's telling me you're not handling the search right. Number two, it tells me that you're lazy. I sent them out. Okay, well, we're also paying you for another 8 hours during the day. That took you about 10 or 15 minutes. What else are you doing? How else are you trying to hustle? I've worked with recruiters and I borderline have to tell them, look, you're about to be arrested for stalking. I need you to dial it back, And then I had others that just did I sent the emails. Well, let's find somewhere in the middle, if you can, and if you do have the phone number, maybe send them a text. Go, hey, I know this is a random text. I'm a recruiter. I saw your LinkedIn profile. I know you're probably bombarded in LinkedIn. Do you have 20 minutes? Love to just catch up with you. That's it. So now I've got two different data points. And then I've got that sequence going on because it's going to hit them. Maybe they ignore the first one. The second one they actually get. So to me, it makes sense, to get rid of that crutch and get back to the good old human part of recruiting, which is voice to voice.
For sure. You talked about multi-channel approach,
Hmm.
and in this approach that you're doing, I'm sure your recruiters are still utilizing LinkedIn, but they're not
Oh yeah.
using like a LinkedIn recruiter. So you can send them an email, you can go on their LinkedIn profile, try to connect with them, go back and do a text message if they haven't responded, get their contact information, give them a
Hmm.
call, and have in that sequence on that and utilizing technology to build out that strategy to
Hmm.
get back to the human touch. Walk us through maybe an approach of utilizing technology, whether it's AI messaging or something that you're utilizing to get back to the human touch and talking to individuals.
So let's go back to your mass email example. I got two last night. One that was asking me to be a site director in Florida based off of my experience in hospitality. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not known for hospitality. Never worked in the industry, not known for it. You want hospitality? Go and talk to my husband. He's the hospitable one in our group. So that told me that the recruiter didn't even look. They just maybe found one thing that was on my LinkedIn profile and sent something out. You don't recover from that as a recruiter. You do not recover from that. So what I like to do is I like to, now that I have AI, I used to have to do this manually, is I'll go in and, let's just say download a PDF, put it in the chat GPT. I put in my profile and I say, what commonality do we have? What is this person's highest interest? Okay, and it gives, let's just say ChatGPT says A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, write me a funny email subject line using E. All right, so let me give an example. Um, Found this candidate. This was back some years ago. I was working on a pretty senior level position, and most of the time I was very professional. This one lady, I wanted her in the mix because I'm a huge proponent of diversity. And she just, everyone I talked to about her in the market said, oh, she is phenomenal. So I tried the normal approach. And then I tried kind of a little funny, tongue in cheek. And then somehow, I don't know whether it was a post on her LinkedIn or somehow I saw a public post, but I found out she was a Bon Jovi fan. So the subject of my last email to her was like, this is my last chance. And I'm sorry, so many recruiters give love a bad name. I'm a little different. Give me a ring if you're interested. I kid you not, 12 minutes later, I'm getting a phone call. And she said, how did you know that I like Bon Jovi? I said, well, I borderline stalked you. That's just how bad I want to talk to you. I said, do you feel wanted? Do you feel needed? Do you feel, pretty? And, she was like, absolutely. And it completely changed how that call went. So it went from me catching her off guard to, okay, you've taken the time, you have my attention. And it took me 2 years, but I finally got her to accept a position with the company that I was working with. But we had gotten to the point where she was sending me pictures of her daughter in prom dress. I think her daughter was like 5 years older than mine. So I was asking her questions and stuff. So by the time she came on, we'd already known each other for like 2 or 3 years, And so I actually showed up for her orientation, and because I normally didn't facilitate orientation, but I had to that time, and she was in it, and I said, "Okay, I got to give you a hug. I feel like I've known you for all this time." That is recruiting at its finest. That is recruiting focused on the person, and that is recruiting leveraging AI to focus on all the things that really matter.
We're in the world of data and data on people.
Mhm.
How do you um, organize all these individuals that your teams are talking to. Maybe they're not ready for this specific role they're working on,
Hmm.
but in 2 years, they are. And there's a ton of conversations you had throughout that period and information. Maybe they switched a job, all this updating information, you utilize that information. So eventually you reach out to them again with the data that you have. How are you coaching your teams into doing that and rediscovering talent within a place where
Hmm.
I've already had a conversation with them? They were interested at our company at some point. Now I got to use the information that I have to do an outreach.
All right. So 20, I want to say 2023. What year are we in? 24, 2022.
24. Yep.
God, since 2020, it's just been like a big, long day. We were doing kind of the one-to-one recruiting. So we've got a full stack developer for this client, a full stack developer for this client. We've got four different recs. We go and we hire four different people. We get another full stack developer. You don't know what we were doing? Starting the search all over again. Post the job, wait for people to do. That is so completely asinine to me from an efficiency standpoint. So we turned it on its head. So we kind of figured out the 5 or 6 flavors of jobs that we hire for. We had one position that was posted externally, and for all of my friends that are in OFCCP, I'm so sorry, but I do not miss it. I can do this now. I couldn't do it under OFCCP. I can post that one position and have people come in, and then I put them into Hire Easy, and our whole front end of our candidate experience is in Hire Easy. We push them to ATS once they're client ready. So they've gone through all of our rigorous testing, interviews, and everything, and then they get put into the ATS. And what that allows us to do is that at any given moment, whenever I've got a new full stack developer, let's say I need them to have experience in React and Node, I can go into that client ready, go down on the left-hand side of Hire Easy in skills, type in React and Node, and out of the 50, here are 8. Boom, email. I got this new experience, this new opportunity. Love to talk to you about it. You were a great fit throughout our interview process. Are you interested in scheduling some time? Here's my calendar. That took me 2 minutes. Why would you not want to do that? You know, rather than starting this, it's like Groundhog Day. Start the search all over again and then just get right back into it. So for us, you know, we're in the people business. So we build products and solutions for our clients, but we also do some staff augmentation because we have such great people. I enable my sales team because they have access to the pipeline or to our talent pool. Whenever they're meeting with the client says, "Oh my gosh, I need 5 data engineers with Snowflake experience." They're in there, look, and hey, we've got 15. When do you want them to start? What's the interview process? You know, and then from there, you get from being a recruiter to an usher. You know, you're just kind of ushering them through the process. But we're in that constant state of recruiting and looking for that top talent in that particular pool. And then we just push them. And then it's on the front side of the house to go and make sure that we have opportunities to be able to place them. It is
Awesome.
offensive recruiting rather than defensive recruiting.
Love that. When you evaluate processes and products to attain that high performance recruiting culture, what
Mhm.
are the parameters that you go off of?
Ease of use. I am huge, 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 huge on support. You can have the best product in the world, but if I run into an issue or I have an idea or I know that there's a way to do it and I don't want to look through the help, is there a support team that I know by name that I can reach out to? So I'm going to go ahead and plug that I've had 2 or 3 favorites with Hire Easy. Ben was one of my favorites. Sam is now assigned to our account. Love him because, you know, like I didn't even think about this. He even went one step and said, "Hey, here's a Slack thing." So if I have a question, I'll just ping him, you know, and he'll go, "Hey, here's the link." Perfect. You know, that to me, I will pay a premium price for because it's saving me something that I never get back is time and focus. And he actually jumped in on our team call the other day, and we were working on a couple of really tough searches. And he goes, "Have you tried this? Have you tried this?" And you can ask him. I actually said, God, I feel like an idiot. I should have totally thought about that. Why didn't I think about that? So for me, it's not just the support function. It's feeling like I have a partner, and I can pick up the phone, and I've done it, with a couple of higher Z teammates of, is everyone in the market experiencing what I'm experiencing? I need a temperature check because you guys go across so many different industries. It gives me a great outside in viewpoint or vantage point for what we're going through. So definitely, we're a bootstrap firm. I do have to look and weigh out the economic aspect of it. I look at the impact, the ease of use, and then the support. Those kind of almost in a reverse order because I'll pay for better support.
You think other services, if they get too big, you don't get that interaction and that support because it's just play to play, pay to play, and
Um, I don't know. I really, this is going to seem like a love fest for Hire Easy. I'm just totally answering the question. I think it starts with the culture that you build. And from the day one that I've started working with Hire Easy, it has been how can we help you be successful? And what are some ideas that you have for us to enable you to do that? That's a partnership. So I think it's more of a cultural thing. I've worked with large companies that, you were just kind of a number or a ticket. And I've also worked with smaller companies that you were just a number and a ticket to help them get to the funding or the IPO that they wanted. One thing that you all have remained very constant in is that partnership and being able to say, hey, here's a sneak peek of some things that are coming. Or I think with you, I said, hey, I've got some ideas of reports that I need. Here's a list. Let me know if you guys can get it done. That to me, I love that. And again, I'll pay for that because that's invaluable information, invaluable investment in me, and also investment in the company that I represent.
how have you evolved your tech stack over the last 2 years with you and your team?
Um, we have gone from being, if I look at it from a budget standpoint, heavy, heavy, heavyweight in LinkedIn Recruiter and LinkedIn advertising to now heavy, heavy, heavy in Hire Easy. I think I cut LinkedIn probably in half, the amount that I was spending, 60% if you include what they're going to bump my rate up to, and really started looking at other AI tools that can help, whether it's analyzing our processes, automating some of our processes. Us moving a lot of our stuff front end wise to Hire Easy has allowed us to do a lot of automation, engagement, drip campaigns, all of that other kind of stuff. So that's kind of how we're evolving and looking at, if we are placing people in a company, I pride myself and the team that we provide a boutique experience. You want a cheek in the seat that's going to give it to you for X%, which is, 20% less than I would go for it. That's fantastic. And when you need to refill that job and you come back to me again, I'm not going to say I told you so. I'm just going to increase your rate.
Got it. Okay. Um,
So
Go ahead.
So there was a question, what are the top three skills you see in the best recruiters? I call it the trifecta: adaptability, intellectual curiosity, and grit. Whenever I find someone that has those three, I will almost hire them on the phone. And I have before, because they have the grit. They're not going to give up. They're going to find a way. An obstacle is an opportunity for them. They're adaptable, which means that they're going to find a new tool, a new way. They've got that learning and that creative mindset. And intellectually curious, they're really going to try to understand the why, the how, the what of the manager, the job, the market. You put all three of those together, I mean, they're unstoppable, man. So if you're a recruiting leader and you want to know which three of the seven that you should look for, it's adaptability, intellectual curiosity, and grit.
You've been at a couple companies, and there's a famous quote that's getting thrown around that I think it's very funny. And no matter where you went, you brought Hire Easy with you, and you told
Mm-hmm.
one CHRO that you'll have to take it out of my cold, dead hands when
I
he
did.
asked about, removing Hire Easy from the tech stack.
I did.
Why are you so passionate about that? And what was those conversations from organization to organization to organization?
So whenever I'm interviewing in with a new organization, I ask a lot of questions, kind of give me a state of the union. And then of course they reverse and go, what would you change? And I always let them know I don't believe in cookie cutter answers. I believe in being very surgical and very diagnostic organization to organization because everything's different. The organization that you mentioned, it's Maggie Loriano, who was the CHRO. She was actually the first CHRO to give me my break in recruiting, and then 17 some odd years later, I ended up working for her again. And she's like, "Well, why? I mean, why are you so into this?" And I was able to go in and say, "We have hired X number of people for Hire Easy. If I look at the profitability per hire, so not the cost, the profitability that is brought in by just these 15, 20, whatever number of roles, Hire Z has paid for itself 6 times. That is why you're not taking it out of my cold dead hand. So going into always, talk about the tools that I like to use and what I've seen work and what I have seen not. And whenever I bring in Hire Z, it's usually filling two different things. One, they're not getting a lot of help or productivity out of the current tools. Two, they have no line of sight on any kind of analytics, meaning industry, market analytics. And then three, they have no analytics as to what messaging works, which recruiter is actually the one that's moving more candidates through the pipeline. All the different analytics that I have on the back end that I can judge my team, in addition to what I can look at what's going on in the market. And then, oh, by the way, I have access, across 45 different platforms. I only have to pay for one. It's kind of a no-brainer. But it's all
Is
in how
that
you
what you would
position
tell
it.
to some, is that what you would tell somebody if, they think of HireEasy as just a specific sourcing tool, and then you would just say, actually, it goes further than that, and sourcing might be a good portion of it, but then analytics is the first thing that you talked about into sourcing.
Oh God. Well, I'm a salesperson at heart. So I've always been in sales. Recruiting is just another form of sales. So I'm really, really keen to listen. What are their pain points? And then I relate it to, okay, this is how this particular product solves that problem. And can help you differentiate. So it's not just solve, it's solve and differentiate. That to me is kind of the power punch. So for one organization that I was doing some consulting with, they were complaining because they're like, we can't really pay what's in the market. I said, well, do you know what's in the market? Well, we get from what's Towers Watson. Okay, that's fantastic, but you understand that most of the time that information is about 18 months old. So if there's been any shift in the market, you're 18 months behind. And then usually I will say, what are you looking for? And I'll share my screen and I'll show them, here's what's going on in the market right now. You know, so if I look at what I'm paying for some of those ancillary services with other vendors versus what I can get in my all-in-one, why wouldn't I spend what I'm spending on Hire Easy? I use it to be able to keep a finger on the market in tech for both our opportunities. Also look at what's going on in the US because I know that in 90 days it's going to be happening in Latin America. So if there's any kind of a shift, I'm having to manage two different hemispheres. I need that information. I've got to have it. If not, then I'm rendered almost ineffective as a leader.
Awesome.
It's just that
There
simple
is
to
a
me.
there's a question in the chat. It says, do you pair HireEasy with another ATS or use it as your ATS database?
You know, um, you can do both. You can do both, and you can do one or the other. So for us, we have the ATS. It's been there. It's relatively inexpensive, and it fits the need of what we need. Because we also use it internally for like tech interviews and stuff. We can all like do discussions and tag each other and everything. That's fantastic. If I had my own search agency and I was starting tomorrow, HireEasy would be my end to end because I'm placing people with another organization. So I don't really have to hire them. I don't have to do any of the paperwork. I don't have to do any of the onboarding. I can just show that I actually hired the person. So if I were a standalone search agency, I would use HireEasy end to end. If you're in a situation where you do have to do the onboarding and some paperwork and all the taxes and stuff like that. You need an ATS. That's what ATS, about the only thing they're built for. But make sure that you pay for that integration between HireEasy and whatever your ATS is, because the other thing that we haven't talked about, which is one of my favorite um, aspects that HireEasy offers, is the rediscovery. So I worked with an organization just doing some consulting, and they were like, "We're running out of candidates." I'm like, okay, answer me a question. I said, "You're not going to be able to answer it now, but I'll give you 48 hours. Give me an answer. How many people total are sitting in your ATS?" So she actually came back later that afternoon. She goes, "I got the number." And I said, "Okay, let's get on there." She goes, 85,000. I said, "So you just told me earlier you ran out of candidates, right?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "You have 85,000 people at one point have engaged with your brand, knows about your brand, expressed an interest. So do you really not have enough candidates?" Her problem was, is how do I get to them? There was no search function. There was no enrichment or anything. And when you guys released that rediscovery, and you talk about a sexy product, especially for large organizations, you're sitting on a gold mine of information. Go and pull it in there and create your talent pools from there. If you're recruiting tellers all day long, twice on Sunday in Dallas, have that thing connected to your ATS and it's constantly saying, "Oh, these people are interested. So therefore, these people that you don't even know about over here, these are probably good fits." You're fighting a battle on two fronts and you're going to win on both.
Love it. Another question, it says, what AI and or automation tools are you finding work the best with your HireEasy setup? And which one makes you smile because they maximize your time or ROI so much?
It would not necessarily be an AI like Zapier or anything like that. It would actually be the integration that I have built between HireEasy and the ATS. That to me is just, it's sexy. I mean, there's no other word. I mean, it just makes our life easier. So appending from one to the next, I'm not quite sure if there's anything out there that would really kind of fit that bill the way that HireEasy coming in. I worked with their implementation team. They asked me all throughout the process, asked me questions and really kind of tailored it to where it wasn't just something that they just did a pop in and hope it works. We want to make sure that all of these little tentacles are all moving in the right direction, and the results have been fantastic.
Awesome. Another one says, with agile approach, how and who do you prioritize the roles with? Having over
Mm-hmm.
300 racks open and everyone views their rack as a priority. How do you sort that?
This question. All right. So you've got 300, let's just say within one division. You meet with that division head and say either you or your proxy is going to determine where the points are allocated. So you've got 500 points over these 300 roles. I want you to assign a point value. Who is that? All right, it's Daniel. Okay, so Daniel every 2 weeks is going to be meeting with my team and me. We're going to go through, we're going to give him an update of how the previous sprint went. And we're going to say, "Danny, you have 500 points. Where do you want us to focus over the next 2 weeks?" And then we're going to report our progress against how you define success today in 2 weeks. Now, in the interim, if another manager, John Apple, comes and says, "Oh, mine's a priority," that's fantastic. As the recruiter, it's fantastic. I bet it is. Have you talked to Dan? Dan's the one that assigned the priority. What it does is it takes us out of this rat race. The business defines the priority. So that's between you, John Apple, and Dan. I've got stuff to do. I've got to hit my whip limits on the ones that I do know are prioritization. But it does, we also give some flexibility that if there's just massive job that you've got to get filled that just happened and it's a high income producer or whatever, there's expedited. So they can have 100 points on that one roll. And what that means is that everything else in the sprint for that division stops until we hit our whip limit on that. You'd be so surprised how many times, "Oh, we've got to get this done. This has got to be expedited." Whenever I say, "So you want us to stop working on everything else?" I'll pull the whole team and work on this job until we get 5 candidates ready to be submitted. They go, "When's the next sprint start?" 9 times out of 10. because now I am asking them to really define what is priority because that's their role. Our job is just to meet that definition of success. So if you've got 300 roles, think of squeezing it in a funnel. The first one is over the next 2 weeks. What do I need to do? Okay, now I've got those 40. You've got 200 points, assign a point value to each one of them. Then I can really start honing in. I'm zeroed in on what my client says is success rather than me going, I filled 42 roles and Dan going, that's fantastic. 32 of them were not important to me. Now we've level set. I'm locked in step with the client. And that creates a trust factor, but it also creates an accountability. Because if I'm not holding up, like if the recruiters are just sourcing and doing whatever they want to on the other jobs and I'm not managing them, it's on me. But if the manager's not giving us feedback on something they said was priority, now I can shift shift that limelight right back to them.
And you're talking business lingo. They get it when it's accountability and
Mm-hmm.
action. And you're going into the discussions with reviewing resumes and holding each other accountable of I will get you your people. You need to complete your action on your end, or we're moving on.
Well,
And
but the other thing too, we've talked about analytics. This gives me a whole nother level of analytics.
sure.
So I can tell you that one of the clients that I've worked with in the past, their big days. So we tracked when were offers sent and offers accepted, because that was their definition of done. That's whenever they could collect the points. Over 10 days, what was the highest percentage of points that were earned by day? We learned day 2, day 5, day 7, day 9. And she goes, okay, well, what do I do with that information? I said, do not allow any meeting on any of those days. No team meetings, no team trainings, no team outings. You want your team focused on those days on getting those points across the board. And it helped the recruiters because someone was actually looking and saying, okay, I'm going to give you the space you need to succeed. I am keeping all these other meetings off of your plate because you've got these 3 or 4 offers and I think that you're going to close. Statistically, you're going to close on one of these 4 or 5 days. So it's not just helping with the prioritization, it's giving you another data point to be able to help make sure that your team is running efficiently and that your client stays happy.
Awesome. Another question said,
Mm-hmm.
what is the one thing you would do or change in your recruitment career?
Oh, I would say learn to be quiet in meetings, but whatever I don't say, my face usually says, so that wouldn't work. Um, really don't know that there's just one thing. I think the biggest thing for me, and this is not just about recruiting, this is kind of in life, something that I wish I would have learned earlier, is to be present. I was always thinking about the next step. What am I doing today to get me to the next step? Um, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you I'm in the position that I am today because I had it planned. I knew what my steps were. But in the process of looking forward, I wasn't present. And I wonder how many missed opportunities because I was so focused on looking forward. How many missed connections, how many missed lessons. So just be present and be willing to kind of take whatever the universe, whatever your belief system is, whatever's thrown at you that day, take it, embrace it, live it, and then move on and do the same thing the next day. It has helped me be less anxious, less, I wouldn't say less driven. I am I'm driven now by the right things. I think
Love it.
that's probably the only thing because I was a workaholic. I mean, I worked. I remember coming out of surgery once and was coming out of anesthesia and I asked them for it was my BlackBerry. I said, "Where's my BlackBerry?" And the doctor goes, "You don't need that right now." And I didn't, having gone back and read the emails that I sent coming out of anesthesia. But that's just how my brain worked. And now it's like enjoy the moment.
Any last minute advice, anything else that you want to touch on as we wrap up this webinar?
I just want to take some time for recruiters, whether you're in the market, you've probably been looking for a while. It's very desperate times. I want to let you know that those of us that are in the market that care, we hear you. My heart hurts for so many people because I know so many people that are out there looking and have been looking. For those of us that are in recruiting, I know it's tough. This too shall pass. That's what I tell myself every night when I go to bed. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. But I do, for those that are recruiting, especially for recruiting roles, I did a post today about a concern that I have about us losing compassion and empathy in recruiting. We lose that, we might as well give it to AI because AI is going to do it a lot better. That's where we differentiate ourselves. So if you're recruiting for a recruiting role and you talk and you interview a fellow recruiter and maybe they don't make the cut, call them, text them, send them an email, close that loop. It is humane. It is malpractice, in my opinion. It's malpractice to have talked to someone, forged a little bit of a relationship, and then ghost them. They get that in their personal life. They don't need it in your brand.
And a last minute question, it says, who have been the influencers who have helped you along the way?
I read a lot. Brene Brown, Simon Sinek, the Heath brothers, Robert Greene, because he does a lot about strategy and history and relates it to business. So, part of the journey for me in developing, I knew that I owned that. And so I take the time to invest back. And for me, it fills my cup up. Um, there have been so many leaders who have made an imprint on my life. I would need another hour just to go through it. Whether it was the leader who told me that I didn't need to be the quietest voice in the room, to the one who, oh gosh, the one that I called to let him know that something very personal and bad had happened to me. And he said, okay, what can I do to help? And just those moments, that's why I said be present and take those moments. So I wish I could list all of them. I'd forget one. I'd love to do a whole series just based on them because they're some freaking phenomenal, just amazing people.
As we wrap up, how do we get connected with you? Talk to us a little bit about your blog, your books, your social media presence, your YouTube. How do people consume your content?
So I do try to stay active on LinkedIn, even though I think they put me in the corner. I've got a YouTube channel, High Performance Recruiting, also on TikTok and Instagram. And you can check out the blog at sprintrecruiting.com. It's SPRINT recruiting.com. I try to write maybe once or twice a week out there. I try to put one or two videos on YouTube out there. If you like any of the stuff that I talked about today, especially with Hire Easy, I've been doing a lot of it because I get a lot of questions whenever I'm coaching other leaders. So I figure if they're asking me that question about how to use LinkedIn, I want to be able to kind of, or not LinkedIn, Hire Easy, I kind of put it out there. So if you want to kind of see how I use the analytics side of it, there's a video out there. But yeah, find me. And if you have questions, if you read the book, you have some feedback or some questions, you can always send me something on LinkedIn. I'll try to answer within 24 hours.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Trent, for our friendship, our relationship, and just you be who you are. You're authentic, and people love the authentic nature about you.
Not
Because
everybody.
uh, well, I love it, and
Thank
most
you.
people
Thank
do,
you.
because your heart is in the right spot, and it goes back to helping other people and being humane, like you always talk. You always talk. So I want to get you and the whole HatchWorks team. Thank you for coming on this webinar. To get involved in Hire Easy, there's a ton of stuff that is coming up. Uh, Join the community. There's the new FRBR conference on May 28th. The lineup will be released this week on some speakers, so get involved there. And then we also got the Outbound Recruiting Academy. And feel free to download the Speakeasy podcast. Trent Cotton
Definitely.
was on there about a month ago, and he talks a little more in depth on his approach to recruiting, and it's super, super valuable to the listeners. So get involved here. Like I said, feel free to connect with me, connect with Trent, and really let's embrace the community and help us each other elevate our games. So thanks again, Trent. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. And thank you, Hire Z.
See you guys.
Oh, we don't talk after?
Hey, Trent.
Hey.